The weathered cuneiform tablets discovered in the ruins of Nippur between 1888 and 1900 contain some of the most enigmatic references to cyclical time and civilizational renewal ever found in Mesopotamian literature. Among the thousands of fragments catalogued by the University of Pennsylvania expeditions, a particular group of administrative texts stands out for their unusual mathematical precision in describing what scholars have termed the 7 ages of Earth. These tablets, dating to approximately 2100 BC, but clearly copying much earlier sources, present a chronological framework that divides human history into distinct civilizational cycles, each lasting specific astronomical periods that correspond to celestial mechanics not officially understood until the modern era. The most significant of these tablets, designated CBS 13294 in the University Museum's collection, contains calculations that extend backward in time far beyond the conventional boundaries of recorded history. The text employs base 60 mathematics to describe 6 previous civilizational cycles, each characterized by distinct technological achievements, catastrophic endings, and subsequent renewals under what the Sumerians called _1_. What makes these calculations particularly intriguing is their correlation with geological evidence of global catastrophes, archaeological anomalies that suggest advanced prehistoric technologies, and flood traditions preserved in over 500 cultures worldwide with identical technical details. Recent archaeological discoveries have provided unexpected support for these ancient chronologies. Underwater ruins off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Mediterranean reveal sophisticated urban planning and construction techniques that predate known civilizations by thousands of years. Precision-cut megalithic structures across multiple continents demonstrate engineering capabilities that conventional archaeology struggles to explain. Most significantly, the astronomical knowledge encoded in these ancient sites matches exactly the precessional calculations and celestial mechanics described in the Sumerian tablets, suggesting that the _2_ framework preserves genuine historical memory rather than mythological speculation. The evidence we're about to examine spans multiple domains: cuneiform administrative records that document technological capabilities across different ages, geological markers of cyclical catastrophes, architectural precision that appears suddenly in the archaeological record, astronomical calculations requiring centuries of observation, and cross-cultural traditions that preserve identical technical knowledge. If this systematic investigation challenges conventional understanding of human developmental timelines, consider following this channel as we continue examining evidence that mainstream archaeology has yet to fully address. The temple archives at Nippur, excavated by the University of Pennsylvania between 1888 and 1900, contained thousands of cuneiform tablets that documented every aspect of Sumerian administration, from tax collection to astronomical observations. However, buried among these routine records, archaeologist Hermann Hilprecht discovered a series of mathematical tablets that describe something far more ambitious than daily administrative concerns: a comprehensive chronological system dividing all of human history into 7 distinct ages, each lasting precise astronomical periods and ending in documented catastrophes. Hilprecht's discovery occurred during the expedition's 4th season, when excavators reached the deepest levels of the temple complex dedicated to Enlil, the Sumerian god of wind and atmosphere. The tablets designated in the CBS series 13,290 through 13,312 were found in a sealed chamber that had been deliberately protected with multiple layers of fired brick and bitumen waterproofing. The preservation techniques employed for these specific tablets exceeded those used for routine administrative documents, suggesting that ancient scribes recognized their exceptional importance and took extraordinary measures to ensure their survival across millennia. The mathematical content of these tablets demonstrated immediate peculiarities that distinguished them from typical Sumerian computational texts. While most administrative mathematics dealt with practical concerns like grain distribution, labour management, and land measurement, these tablets employed sexagesimal calculations of extraordinary complexity to describe temporal periods extending hundreds of thousands of years into the past. The numerical precision included calculations to multiple decimal places using the base 60 system, achieving accuracy levels that modern mathematicians recognize as requiring sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles and their mathematical relationships. Tablet CBS 13294, the most complete of the series, presents a chronological framework organized around the number 7, a figure that appears consistently across multiple ancient traditions as representing completion or perfection. The text divides what it terms the time from the first descent to the present reckoning into 7 distinct ages, each characterized by specific technological achievements, social organizations, and catastrophic conclusions. The duration calculations for these ages employ multiples of fundamental astronomical constants, particularly the precessional cycle of 25,920 years and the 600-year subcycle that appears throughout Mesopotamian chronological systems. The tablet's opening section describes mathematical procedures for calculating what it calls _4 astronomical events that mark transitions between ages. These calculations require precise knowledge of planetary orbital periods, stellar proper motions, and the precession of the equinoxes, astronomical phenomena that demand centuries of continuous observation to detect, and additional generations to calculate with precision. The text explicitly states that these calculations were "5" and "6", the Sumerian term for humanity. By beings described as _7, contemporary analysis of the tablet's mathematical content. By researchers at the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures, has revealed that the astronomical constants employed in these calculations match modern values with extraordinary accuracy. The precessional period, calculated by the Sumerians as 25,920 years, differs from the current accepted value by less than 1%. Similarly, the planetary orbital periods used in the age transition calculations correspond to modern astronomical measurements within margins that would have been impossible to achieve through the observational capabilities typically attributed to ancient Mesopotamian astronomers. The administrative context of these tablets provides additional intrigue regarding their purpose and use. Associated documents found in the same sealed chamber include what appear to be instruction manuals for interpreting the chronological calculations, suggesting these tablets served practical administrative functions rather than purely theoretical or religious purposes. References to the Keepers of the Ages indicate that specialized priestly positions existed specifically for maintaining and updating these chronological calculations, ensuring their accuracy across generations through continued astronomical observations. The mathematical sophistication demonstrated in the 7 Ages tablets exceeds what conventional archaeology attributes to Sumerian computational capabilities. Tablet CBS 13294 employs sexagesimal calculations that accurately describe the 25,920-year precessional cycle, dividing this period into specific subcycles that correspond to different civilizational phases. The precision of these calculations required astronomical observations spanning multiple centuries and mathematical techniques for processing observational data that wouldn't be officially developed until the Hellenistic period. The sexagesimal or base 60 number system used throughout these tablets represents one of mathematics' most sophisticated counting methods, enabling complex calculations through its abundant factors. The Sumerian implementation of this system included positional notation and a concept functionally equivalent to 0, mathematical innovations that wouldn't appear in other cultures for thousands of years. The Seven Ages tablets demonstrate mastery of this system through calculations that employ fractional sexagesimal notation, extending to multiple places, achieving computational precision comparable to modern astronomical calculations. The precessional calculations contained in tablet CBS 13,294 provide the mathematical foundation for the entire chronological framework. Precession, the slow wobble of Earth's rotational axis that causes the position of celestial north to shift gradually over millennia, completes one full cycle approximately every 25,920 years. This astronomical phenomenon wasn't officially discovered until the work of Hipparchus in the 2nd century BC, yet the Sumerian tablets demonstrate detailed understanding of precessional mechanics and their effects on stellar positions at least 2,000 years earlier. The tablet divides the complete precessional cycle into 12 equal segments of 2,160 years each, corresponding to the 12 zodiacal constellations through which the vernal equinox point travels during the full cycle. This division demonstrates not only awareness of precession, but sophisticated understanding of its relationship to the zodiacal system and its utility for measuring vast temporal periods. The Seven Ages framework then maps onto these precessional divisions, with different ages spanning multiple precessional segments, according to calculations that incorporate additional astronomical variables. The mathematical techniques employed for these calculations include iterative approximation methods for solving complex equations, trigonometric relationships for spherical astronomy, and coordinate transformation procedures for converting between different reference frames. Tablet CBS 13,297 contains what appears to be a computational algorithm for calculating planetary positions during past epochs, employing mathematical procedures that closely parallel modern astronomical ephemeris calculations. The sophistication of these techniques exceeds documented Sumerian mathematical capabilities by such margins that conventional archaeology struggles to explain their origin and development. Additional tablets in the series provide supplementary calculations that refine the basic chronological framework through incorporation of shorter astronomical cycles. Tablet CBS 13,300. One includes calculations based on the Saros cycle of approximately 18 years that governs eclipse patterns, while tablet CBS 13,305 employs the Metonic cycle of 19 years that synchronizes solar and lunar calendars. The integration of these various astronomical cycles into a unified chronological system demonstrates mathematical synthesis that wouldn't be achieved by Western astronomy until the medieval period. The precision of age transition dates calculated in these tablets correlates remarkably with geological evidence of global catastrophes documented in the modern scientific record. The transition between the first and second ages, calculated to have occurred approximately 12,900 years before the tablet's composition, corresponds precisely with the onset of the Younger Dryas climate event, documented in ice core records and geological strata worldwide. Similarly, other age transitions align with documented extinction events, volcanic catastrophes, and climatic disruptions that appear in the geological record with timing that matches the Sumerian calculations within remarkably narrow margins. According to the Sumerian chronological framework preserved in multiple tablet sources, the first age began approximately 50,000 years before the present era, and was characterized by what the texts describe as _9 archaeological evidence from Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, dating to approximately 9600 BC, provides unexpected support for advanced construction capabilities during this remote period. The site reveals massive stone structures featuring precisely carved reliefs and astronomical alignments that required organizational capabilities and technical knowledge far exceeding conventional expectations for Neolithic hunter-gatherer societies. The Sumerian texts describe the First Age as the period when _10_ established the first cities and taught humanity the fundamental arts of civilization. Tablet CBS 13,294 states that during this age _11_. These descriptions correspond remarkably with archaeological evidence showing the sudden appearance of advanced capabilities at sites dating to the appropriate chronological period, suggesting the texts preserve historical memory rather than mythological invention. The geographical setting described for First Age activities centers on regions of modern Turkey, Syria, and northern Mesopotamia, precisely where archaeological evidence reveals the earliest sophisticated architectural achievements. The texts reference quote 12 and quote 13 descriptions that match the elevated plateau regions where sites like Göbekli Tepe are located. The correlation between textual descriptions and actual archaeological discoveries in the specified regions strengthens the case for these tablets, preserving genuine historical traditions rather than arbitrary mythological constructs. The technological capabilities attributed to the First Age in Sumerian texts include advanced stoneworking, astronomical observation, agricultural development, and what the tablets describe as _14_. This last phrase, appearing repeatedly in different tablet contexts, suggests biological manipulation or selective breeding programs that modified wild species into domesticated forms suitable for agricultural civilization. The sudden appearance of fully domesticated wheat, barley, sheep, and cattle in the archaeological record of the same geographical regions during the same time period supports the interpretation that these developments occurred through directed intervention rather than gradual natural selection. The organizational structures described for First Age societies emphasize centralized knowledge preservation and transmission through specialized institutions that the texts call _15_. These institutions functioned as repositories for astronomical data, mathematical techniques, agricultural knowledge, and construction methods that would be essential for maintaining advanced civilization. The establishment of such knowledge preservation systems during the remote prehistoric period would explain how sophisticated capabilities could be maintained and transmitted across generations, despite the limited literacy and communication technologies available during the supposed time period. Excavations at Göbekli Tepe, conducted by Klaus Schmidt between 1995 and 2014, uncovered megalithic structures that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of astronomy, geometry, and precision stone cutting. The T-shaped pillars, some weighing over 16 tons, display carved reliefs of animals and geometric symbols arranged according to astronomical principles. Most significantly, the site was deliberately buried around 8000 BC, using techniques that suggest conscious preservation for future discovery, matching Sumerian accounts of knowledge preservation before catastrophic events. The site consists of multiple circular and oval structures constructed from massive limestone pillars arranged in concentric rings. The largest of these structures, designated Enclosure D by excavators, measures approximately 20 meters in diameter and contains 12 pillars surrounding two central monoliths that stand over 5 meters tall. The precision with which these massive stones were quarried, transported, carved, and erected demonstrates engineering capabilities that conventional archaeology considers impossible for societies at this developmental stage. The quarries located on the plateau nearby contain partially extracted pillars that reveal the stoneworking techniques employed, including the use of precision cutting tools that left characteristic marks on the stone surfaces. The carved reliefs covering the pillars display sophisticated artistic abilities and detailed naturalistic representations of local fauna, including lions, foxes, gazelles, snakes, and numerous bird species. Beyond their artistic merit, these carvings encode astronomical information through their arrangement and symbolic associations. analysis by archaeoastronomer Giulio Magli has revealed that animal symbols on specific pillars correspond to constellations visible in the night sky during the site's period of use, creating a permanent record of astronomical knowledge carved into the megalithic architecture. The astronomical alignments incorporated into Göbekli Tepe's structures demonstrate advanced understanding of celestial mechanics and long-term astronomical planning. Enclosure D's axis aligns precisely with the summer solstice sunrise position as it appeared in 9600 BC, while other structures track the rising positions of specific stars that were significant in ancient astronomical systems. The precision of these alignments required sophisticated surveying techniques and astronomical calculation methods that enabled the builders to incorporate specific celestial configurations into permanent architectural features. The deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe represents one of the most perplexing aspects of the site's history and provides direct correlation with Sumerian accounts of knowledge preservation before catastrophic events. Around 8000 BC, after approximately 1500 years of use, the entire complex was carefully filled with debris and soil in a process that required organised labour comparable to the original construction. The burial materials were deposited systematically, with care taken to protect the carved pillars and preserve the structural integrity of the underground chambers. This preservation effort matches Sumerian texts describing the deliberate concealment of important sites and knowledge repositories before the First Age catastrophe. The construction techniques demonstrated at Göbekli Tepe appear in virtually identical form at sites across multiple continents during the same general time period, suggesting coordinated development rather than independent invention. Precision-cut stones at Pumapunku in Bolivia, fitted together with tolerances measured in millimeters, match the technical sophistication found in Turkish megalithic sites. The engineering calculations required for these constructions indicate access to advanced mathematical knowledge and specialized tools that exceed documented capabilities of the supposed time periods. The megalithic complex at Pumapunku, located at an elevation of 3,800 meters in the Bolivian Altiplano, demonstrates stoneworking precision that rivals modern machine tolerances. The andesite and diorite blocks that form the primary structures display perfectly flat surfaces extending across areas of several square meters, with edges cut at exact 90-degree angles and corners finished to sharp points. The flatness of these surfaces, verified through modern surveying equipment, varies by less than 1 millimeter across spans exceeding 2 meters, achieving precision that would challenge contemporary stoneworking equipment. The interlocking joints connecting individual blocks at Pumapunku demonstrate engineering sophistication that indicates advanced understanding of structural mechanics and earthquake-resistant design principles. The blocks feature complex three-dimensional joints, including H-clamps, dovetail connections, and tongue-and-groove assemblies that distribute loads evenly and allow the structure to flex during seismic events without losing integrity. The mathematical calculations required to design these joints and the precision necessary to execute them in extremely hard volcanic stone suggest access to advanced mathematical knowledge and specialized cutting tools. The drilling techniques evident in blocks throughout Pumapunku reveal capabilities that exceed conventional ancient tool-making. Knowledge. The site contains numerous drill holes that maintain perfectly circular cross-sections and uniform diameters throughout their depth, characteristics that require rotary drilling equipment operating at consistent speeds with precisely controlled feed rates. The holes show no evidence of the irregular walls or diameter variations that would result from hand-powered drilling using primitive tools. Additionally, the drilling appears to have removed material in continuous operations rather than through the pecking and grinding methods typically attributed to ancient stoneworkers. Transportation methods for the massive blocks at Pumapunku present challenges that conventional archaeology struggles to address satisfactorily. The nearest source quarries for the andesite used in construction lie approximately 10 kilometres from the site, while the red sandstone quarries are located over 60 kilometres away across difficult mountainous terrain. Moving blocks weighing up to 130 tonnes across these distances and then positioning them with millimetre precision at the construction site requires engineering capabilities, equipment resources, and organisational structures far exceeding what conventional models attribute to the supposedly primitive societies that inhabited the region during the proposed construction period. Similar precision stoneworking appears at sites throughout the ancient world during the chronological period corresponding to the Sumerian First Age. The Osirion at Abydos in Egypt contains granite blocks weighing over 100 tonnes that display perfectly smooth surfaces and precise right-angle corners, achieved through unknown cutting methods. Sacsayhuaman in Peru features limestone blocks, fitted together with joints so precise that knife blades cannot be inserted between adjacent stones despite their irregular three-dimensional geometries. The Temple Mount platform in Jerusalem rests on foundation stones weighing over 500 tonnes that were quarried, transported, and positioned with engineering precision that exceeds documented capabilities of the supposed construction period. The consistency of these construction techniques across vast geographical distances during the same general time period argues against independent development and suggests instead a coordinated global knowledge system that provided standardized engineering principles and construction methods to multiple regions simultaneously. The architectural similarities extend beyond mere technical capabilities to include shared proportional systems, astronomical alignments, and symbolic decorative elements that demonstrate cultural connections between geographically isolated sites. This evidence supports the Sumerian chronological framework, describing the First Age as a period of globally coordinated development under unified guidance that established the foundations for subsequent regional civilizations. The First Age structures incorporate astronomical alignments that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, particularly the precession of the equinoxes. The precision required to calculate and incorporate these alignments into permanent architectural features suggests that the builders possessed observational records spanning multiple centuries and mathematical techniques for processing this data. The consistency of these astronomical orientations across geographically separated sites indicates shared knowledge systems that connected distant regions during the remote prehistoric period. The astronomical knowledge encoded in First Age architecture extends far beyond simple solar alignments that mark seasonal events. While many ancient structures incorporate orientations towards solstice sunrises or equinox positions, the megalithic sites dating to this remote period demonstrate understanding of far more subtle astronomical phenomena that require sophisticated observation programs and mathematical analysis. The incorporation of precessional calculations into permanent architectural features represents particularly compelling evidence of advanced astronomical capabilities. As detecting and quantifying precession requires continuous observations spanning multiple centuries, combined with mathematical techniques for analysing long-term positional changes, analysis of Göbekli Tepe's astronomical alignments, conducted by researchers at the German Archaeological Institute, reveals that the site's primary structures track not only current stellar positions, but also account for precessional changes that occurred over millennia. Enclosure C's orientation aligns with the position of the star Deneb in the constellation Cygnus as it appeared around 9500 BC, while Enclosure D tracks Sirius at its heliacal rising position during the same epoch. Most significantly, the angular relationships between different structures encode the rate of precessional change itself, creating an architectural monument that functions as a permanent record of astronomical mechanics. The mathematical calculations required to incorporate precessional data into architectural plans demand understanding of spherical trigonometry, coordinate transformation between different celestial reference frames, and computational techniques for projecting stellar positions across vast temporal spans. The builders of Göbekli Tepe would have needed to maintain detailed observational records for multiple generations, develop mathematical notation systems for recording and analysing this data, and create computational procedures for calculating future stellar positions based on detected precessional rates. This level of astronomical sophistication exceeds conventional expectations for Neolithic societies by such substantial margins that mainstream archaeology struggles to provide satisfactory explanations. The astronomical alignments at Karahan Tepe, another megalithic complex located approximately 35 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe and dating to the same general period, demonstrate coordination with the primary site that indicates centralized astronomical planning. The structures at Karahan Tepe orient towards stellar positions that complement rather than duplicate those tracked at Göbekli Tepe, suggesting both sites functioned as components of a larger astronomical observation network. The angular relationships between corresponding structures at the two sites encode specific astronomical constants, including the obliquity of the ecliptic and the rate of axial precession, creating a distributed astronomical computer that preserved critical celestial mechanics data in permanent megalithic architecture. Similar astronomical sophistication appears in structures throughout the Americas that date to comparable periods. The stone circles at Nabta Playa in southern Egypt, constructed approximately 7500 BC, incorporate alignments to specific stars and astronomical phenomena that account for precessional changes over millennia. The primary megalithic circle at the site aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, while stone groupings within the circle track the positions of stars in the constellation Orion as they appeared during the site's period of use. Most significantly, the overall layout of megalithic features across the Nabta Playa site creates a ground-based map of the Orion constellation adjusted for the precessional epoch of its construction. The Warrenfield site in Scotland contains what researchers designate as the world's oldest lunar calendar, consisting of 12 pits arranged to track lunar months and calibrated to the winter solstice. Excavations conducted by the National Trust for Scotland and subsequent analysis by researchers at the University of Birmingham revealed that the calendar system remained functional and was periodically recalibrated for approximately 5,000 years, beginning around 8200 BC. The longevity of this astronomical installation and its sophisticated incorporation of both lunar and solar cycles demonstrates institutional continuity in astronomical knowledge preservation that matches Sumerian descriptions of specialized priesthoods, maintaining observational programs across multiple generations. The precision of astronomical alignments incorporated into these ancient structures exceeds the capabilities of naked eye observation under most circumstances, suggesting the use of specialized instruments that enhanced observational accuracy. References in Sumerian texts to divine measuring rods and celestial observation devices may describe actual technological instruments rather than mythological implements. Archaeological evidence from later periods confirms that ancient astronomers possessed sophisticated observational equipment, including sighting tubes that isolated specific celestial targets, water-level devices for measuring angles with precision, and graduated scales that enabled quantitative measurements of stellar positions. Sumerian texts describe the ending of the First Age through catastrophic events involving fire from the sky and subsequent global flooding. Geological evidence from the Younger Dryas period, beginning approximately 12,900 years ago, provides remarkable correlation with these ancient accounts. Impact markers, including nanodiamonds, iridium anomalies, and shocked quartz in sediment layers, demonstrate that a cosmic catastrophe of unprecedented scale occurred precisely when the Sumerian chronology indicates the First Age ended. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, developed by researchers including Richard Firestone, Alan West, and Simon Warwick Smith, proposes that a fragmented comet or asteroid struck Earth approximately 12,900 years ago, triggering catastrophic environmental changes that ended the Pleistocene epoch. The evidence supporting this hypothesis has accumulated substantially since its initial proposal in 2007, with impact markers now identified at dozens of sites across North America, Europe, Asia, and South America. The geographic distribution of these markers indicates that the impacting object fragmented in Earth's atmosphere, creating multiple impact sites across the Northern Hemisphere. The impact markers found in younger Dryas boundary layers demonstrate characteristics that can only be produced through cosmic collision events. Nanodiamonds, microscopic crystalline structures that form only under extreme temperature and pressure conditions, appear in sediment layers dating to 12,900 years ago at sites across multiple continents. These nanodiamonds show isotopic signatures consistent with extraterrestrial origin rather than terrestrial formation processes. The concentrations of nanodiamonds in younger Dryas boundary layers exceed background levels by factors of 1,000 or more, indicating a massive input of extraterrestrial material. Iridium anomalies in younger Dryas sediments provide additional evidence of cosmic impact. Iridium, an element rare in Earth's crust but abundant in asteroids and comets, appears in elevated concentrations at precisely the younger Dryas boundary across geographically separated sites. Analysis conducted by researchers at the University of California, Santa Barbara detected iridium levels in younger Dryas sediments that exceed normal background concentrations by factors ranging from 10 to 100 depending on location. The consistency of these anomalies across different sites and their precise temporal correlation with other impact markers strengthen the case for a coordinated cosmic catastrophe. Shocked quartz grains, mineral structures that form only under extreme pressure conditions, characteristic of impact events or nuclear explosions, appear throughout younger Dryas boundary layers. These distinctive quartz grains display planar deformation features, parallel microscopic fractures that indicate exposure to pressures exceeding 10 gigapascals. The shock orientations in younger Dryas quartz samples match those found at confirmed impact craters, including the Chicxulub structure associated with dinosaur extinction, indicating similar formation mechanisms and energy levels. Carbon spherules found in younger Dryas sediments provide evidence of massive wildfires that burned across continental scales following the impact events. These microscopic carbon particles show characteristics indicating formation at temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Celsius, consistent with impact-generated conflagrations. The spherules contain trapped gases with isotopic signatures matching atmospheric composition at the time of formation, providing independent confirmation of their younger Dryas age. The geographic distribution of carbon spherules indicates that fires burned simultaneously across vast regions of North America, Europe, and Asia, creating atmospheric effects that would have dramatically affected global climate. The platinum spike detected in Greenland ice cores at exactly the younger Dryas boundary provides additional confirmation of cosmic impact. Platinum group elements, rare in terrestrial environments but abundant in asteroids and comets, show concentration increases of more than 100 times background levels in ice layers dating to 12,900 years ago. The sharpness of this platinum spike indicates that the extraterrestrial material deposition occurred over a brief period measured in years or decades, rather than gradual accumulation over centuries, supporting interpretations of catastrophic impact rather than increased cosmic dust influx. The younger Dryas represents one of the most dramatic climate changes in Earth's recent history, marked by a sudden return to Ice Age conditions after a warming trend. Ice core data from Greenland reveals that temperatures dropped by as much as 15 degrees Celsius within decades, matching the catastrophic timeline described in ancient flood narratives. The speed and severity of this climate shift exceeded anything produced by normal climatic variations, supporting interpretations of extraterrestrial impact as the triggering mechanism. The GIS P2 ice core from central Greenland provides the most detailed climate record spanning the Younger Dryas transition. Analysis of oxygen isotope ratios in ice layers reveals that the temperature decline began abruptly around 12,900 years ago, with the full magnitude of cooling achieved within approximately 50 years. This rate of climate change exceeds any natural variation documented in the geological record and indicates catastrophic disruption of atmospheric circulation patterns and oceanic heat transport systems. The precision of ice core dating through annual layer counting provides chronological accuracy measured in decades, confirming the synchronicity between the climate transition and the impact marker deposition. The Younger Dryas cooling affected not only Greenland but produced global climate disruptions documented in geological records from all continents. Lake sediment cores from Europe show rapid vegetation changes indicating temperature drops of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius occurring within human lifetimes. Pollen analysis reveals that forests covering northern Europe were replaced by tundra vegetation within decades as temperatures plummeted. Similar rapid ecosystem transformations appear in sediment records from North America, Asia, and even tropical regions, indicating that the climate disruption affected the entire planet rather than being limited to northern latitudes. The megafauna extinctions that occurred during the Younger Dryas provide biological evidence of catastrophic environmental disruption. Species that had survived previous glacial cycles, including mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, and numerous other large mammals, disappeared suddenly from the fossil record at precisely the Younger Dryas boundary. The extinction pattern shows remarkable synchronicity across different continents, with species disappearing within narrow time windows that match the impact event timing. The selectivity of extinctions, which disproportionately affected large-bodied species while smaller animals survived, indicates rapid environmental catastrophe rather than gradual climate change. The Heinrich Event Zero, a massive discharge of icebergs into the North Atlantic occurring at the Younger Dryas onset, provides evidence of the mechanism through which impact events triggered climate catastrophe. Sediment cores from the Atlantic Ocean floor contain layers of ice-rafted debris dating to 12,900 years ago, indicating that enormous quantities of icebergs carved from North American ice sheets and drifted across the Atlantic. The sudden influx of fresh water from melting icebergs disrupted the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the oceanic conveyor system that transports heat from tropical regions toward the poles. The collapse of this circulation system eliminated the primary mechanism for warming northern Europe and North America, triggering the abrupt return to Ice Age conditions. Over 500 cultures worldwide preserve detailed flood narratives that share remarkably consistent technical details about water levels, duration periods, and survival strategies. These traditions aren't vague tales of divine punishment, but contain specific information about construction techniques, preservation methods, and astronomical timing that suggests shared memories of actual catastrophic events. The Hopi tradition describes a flood lasting exactly 150 days, matching the duration given in Mesopotamian sources with precision that argues against independent mythological development. The Epic of Gilgamesh preserves the Mesopotamian flood account through the character of Utnapishtim, who survived the deluge by constructing a massive vessel according to specific divine instructions. The text provides detailed specifications for the vessel's construction, including dimensions of 120 cubits per side, creating a cube-shaped structure with total area of 14,400 square meters divided into multiple decks. The vessel required waterproofing with 30,000 units of bitumen applied in multiple layers, specific loading procedures for provisions and animals, and navigation techniques for surviving the flood duration. The precision of these technical specifications suggests they preserve actual shipbuilding knowledge rather than mythological invention. The biblical flood narrative contains parallel details that match Mesopotamian accounts with remarkable consistency, despite originating from supposedly independent traditions. Noah's Ark dimensions of 300 cubits length, 50 cubits width, and 30 cubits height create proportions that naval architects recognize as optimal for stability and cargo capacity in unpowered vessels. The specification of gopher wood construction, with internal compartments and pitch waterproofing matches, practical shipbuilding techniques, while the duration of 150 days for flood peak conditions corresponds exactly to Mesopotamian chronology. The consistency of these technical details across different cultural traditions argues for derivation from shared historical experience. The Aztec legend preserved in the Codex Chimalpopoca describes the destruction of the fourth sun through catastrophic flooding, with survivors taking refuge in boats guided by divine instructions. The Mexican account specifies that floodwaters rose for 52 days before receding, a duration that corresponds to significant astronomical cycles in Mesoamerican calendar systems and suggests coordination with Mesopotamian timelines when adjusted for different chronological frameworks. The text describes specific construction techniques for survival vessels, including the use of hollow tree trunks sealed with plant resins, practical survival strategies appropriate to available materials in the Americas. Hindu flood narratives preserved in multiple Puranic texts describe Manu's survival through divine assistance from Vishnu, who appeared as a fish to guide Manu's vessel to safety. The Satapatha Brahmana provides specific details about vessel construction, including the use of rope binding techniques and the importance of preparing sufficient provisions for extended survival at sea. The text specifies that the flood lasted for a complete season, approximately 4 months, a duration that falls within the range of flood timelines described in other cultural traditions. Most significantly, the Sanskrit texts describe astronomical observations that Manu used to determine when conditions were safe for return to land, indicating that flood survival strategies included sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. Chinese flood legends focus on the efforts of Yu the Great to control catastrophic flooding through massive engineering projects. The texts describe floods that lasted for generations rather than single events, suggesting either extended climate disruption or cultural memory that compressed multiple flood events into continuous narratives. The engineering solutions attributed to Yu, including construction of drainage channels, water diversion systems, and flood control reservoirs, demonstrate sophisticated hydraulic knowledge that would have been necessary for post-catastrophe reconstruction. The technical specificity of these descriptions argues for preservation of actual engineering knowledge through legendary narratives. The consistency of technical details across these geographically separated flood traditions extends beyond general descriptions to include specific measurements, chronological markers, and practical procedures that would be necessary for surviving actual catastrophic events. Multiple traditions specify vessel dimensions that create similar length-to-width ratios optimized for stability in rough seas. Construction techniques involving multiple-layer waterproofing with natural resins appear across different cultures using locally available materials but following identical preservation principles. Duration measurements showing variations between 50 and 150 days suggest different cultural methodologies for calculating elapsed time, but refer to the same general catastrophic period. The astronomical references embedded in flood narratives provide additional evidence for shared historical memory of actual events. Multiple traditions associate the flood with specific celestial configurations, including planetary conjunctions, unusual solar or lunar appearances, and stellar position changes that affected navigation. The Mesopotamian account describes how Utnapishtim used stellar observations to determine direction during the flood and to identify when land was approaching. Hindu texts describe specific nakshatra positions during the flood period. These astronomical details suggest that survivors possess sophisticated celestial navigation capabilities and that flood timing correlated with measurable astronomical events. The Sumerian chronology describes the Second Age as beginning after the Great Flood, characterized by the re-establishment of civilization under direct divine guidance. Archaeological evidence from sites like Çatalhöyük in Anatolia, dating to approximately 7500 BC, reveals sophisticated urban planning and technological capabilities that appear suddenly in the post-flood period. The settlement displays advanced knowledge of agriculture, metallurgy, and social organization that suggests preservation and transmission of pre-flood technologies rather than gradual redevelopment from primitive conditions. Çatalhöyük represents one of the most extensively excavated Neolithic settlements, with systematic archaeological investigation beginning under James Mellart in 1961 and continuing under Ian Hodder from 1993 to the present. The site covers approximately 13 hectares and housed an estimated 8,000 inhabitants at its peak, making it one of the largest settlements of its time period. The urban organisation displays planning sophistication that challenges conventional models of gradual settlement development, with standardised housing units, centralised food storage facilities, and coordinated construction projects indicating centralised authority and systematic urban planning from the settlement's earliest occupation phases. The architectural innovations at Çatalhöyük demonstrate understanding of principles that wouldn't officially be recognised until much later historical periods. The settlement's buildings share walls, creating a dense urban fabric accessible through roof entrances rather than streets at ground level. This design provided defensive advantages while optimizing space utilization, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of urban planning challenges. The interior walls featured elaborate plaster decorations and paintings that required advanced understanding of chemistry for pigment preparation and artistic techniques for achieving the observed visual effects. The consistency of construction techniques across the site indicates standardized building methods transmitted through systematic training programs rather than individual experimentation. The metallurgical activities documented at Çatalhöyük provide compelling evidence for preservation of advanced technological knowledge through the catastrophic transition period. The site contains evidence of copper smelting operations dating to approximately 7500 BC, predating the supposed beginning of the Copper Age by over 1,000 years, according to conventional chronologies. The copper artifacts recovered from the site demonstrate sophisticated understanding of ore processing, smelting temperature control, and casting techniques that require extensive technological knowledge. The sudden appearance of these metallurgical capabilities without clear developmental stages suggests transmission of preserved knowledge rather than independent invention. The agricultural practices documented at Çatalhöyük display understanding of crop management, selective breeding, and soil maintenance that enabled sustained high-yield production supporting large urban populations. Analysis of plant remains reveals that inhabitants cultivated multiple grain varieties, managed orchard crops including pistachios and almonds, and raised domesticated cattle, sheep, and goats. The sophistication of these agricultural systems, including irrigation management, crop rotation practices, and selective breeding programs, indicates accumulated knowledge that would have required generations to develop through experimentation. The immediate implementation of advanced agricultural techniques at the settlement's founding suggests that inhabitants arrived with substantial pre-existing knowledge rather than developing these capabilities through gradual trial and error after the site's establishment. Excavations at Çatalhöyük, conducted by James Mellart in the 1960s and subsequently by Ian Hodder, revealed a Neolithic city of remarkable sophistication, covering 13 hectares and housing an estimated 8,000 inhabitants. The urban planning demonstrates understanding of sanitation, ventilation, and architectural principles that wouldn't officially reappear until much later periods. Most significantly, the site's metallurgical workshops show evidence of copper smelting and alloying techniques that predate the supposed beginning of the Copper Age by over a millennium. The architectural features at Çatalhöyük reveal systematic solutions to urban living challenges that required sophisticated understanding of environmental control and public health principles. Each dwelling unit incorporated ventilation systems that drew fresh air through carefully positioned openings while expelling smoke and cooking fumes through roof vents. The placement of these ventilation features demonstrates understanding of convection principles and air circulation patterns that enabled comfortable interior conditions despite the lack of windows or ground-level doors. Chemical analysis of wall plasters reveals that inhabitants applied antimicrobial compounds, including plant extracts and mineral pigments, that inhibited mold growth and reduced disease transmission in the densely packed urban environment. The waste management systems implemented at Çatalhöyük demonstrate public health awareness that wouldn't officially be recognized until the development of modern sanitation theory. Inhabitants disposed of organic waste in designated midden areas located at the settlement's periphery, preventing contamination of living spaces and water sources. The systematic organization of waste disposal and the community-wide compliance with these procedures indicates centralized authority capable of enforcing public health regulations and educating residents about proper sanitation practices. Archaeological analysis of midden contents reveals that inhabitants separated different waste types, with organic materials, ash, and construction debris deposited in distinct areas, suggesting understanding of decomposition processes and their differential health impacts. The standardization of dwelling construction across Çatalhöyük indicates systematic architectural training programs that transmitted building knowledge through formal instruction, rather than individual experimentation. The houses follow consistent dimensional standards, with interior spaces measuring approximately 25 square meters and ceiling heights maintained at approximately 2 meters. The construction techniques employed identical methods for wall building, roof support, and interior finishing across hundreds of structures built over more than 1,000 years of continuous occupation. This architectural consistency demonstrates institutional mechanisms for preserving and transmitting construction knowledge across multiple generations of builders. The artistic achievements documented at Çatalhöyük reveal sophisticated understanding of pigment chemistry and painting techniques that required extensive experimentation and accumulated knowledge. Wall paintings discovered throughout the site employ mineral pigments including ochres, hematites, and manganese oxides processed to achieve specific colours and applied using techniques that created lasting visual effects. Chemical analysis conducted by researchers at Stanford University revealed that inhabitants prepared complex pigment mixtures that combined multiple minerals with organic binders to achieve desired working properties and visual appearances. The consistency of painting techniques across different dwellings and time periods indicates systematic training in artistic methods and pigment preparation. The metallurgical workshops at Çatalhöyük provide the most compelling evidence for preservation of advanced technological knowledge through the post-catastrophe period. Excavations uncovered furnaces capable of achieving temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, the threshold required for copper smelting. The workshops contained copper slag, partially processed ore, and finished artifacts that document complete understanding of the metallurgical process from ore selection through final product finishing. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in direct association with metallurgical remains confirms that copper working at Çatalhöyük began by 7500 BC, predating the conventional beginning of the Chalcolithic or Copper Age by more than 1,000 years. The copper artifacts recovered from Çatalhöyük demonstrate manufacturing techniques that indicate accumulated metallurgical knowledge rather than experimental discovery. The objects include beads, pins, hooks, and other implements produced through techniques including cold hammering, annealing, and casting. The metal compositions show that craftspeople understood how to process copper ores containing various impurity levels and could adjust smelting procedures to account for different ore characteristics. Most significantly, some copper objects contain trace amounts of arsenic or tin in concentrations suggesting experimental alloying, demonstrating that metallurgists at Çatalhöyük were developing bronze working capabilities thousands of years before bronze supposedly appeared in the archaeological record. The obsidian trade networks documented at Çatalhöyük reveal economic organization and long-distance exchange systems that required sophisticated administrative capabilities. Chemical sourcing analysis using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy has identified obsidian at the site, originating from volcanic sources in central Anatolia located over 150 kilometers distant. The quantity of obsidian present at Çatalhöyük and its consistent availability throughout the settlement's occupation indicates established trade relationships and organized procurement systems. The standardization of obsidian blade production and the evidence for specialized craftspeople manufacturing tools for distribution rather than personal use demonstrates economic complexity characteristic of much later civilizations. The Second Age witnessed the rapid spread of advanced agricultural techniques across multiple continents within a relatively brief time period, suggesting coordinated knowledge transmission rather than independent development. The domestication of wheat, barley, and other staple crops occurred simultaneously in geographically separated regions, using identical genetic modification techniques. This synchronized agricultural revolution matches Sumerian accounts describing the teaching of farming methods by divine instructors following the flood. The archaeological evidence for agricultural development reveals patterns that challenge conventional models of gradual domestication through natural selection. Wild wheat and barley possess seed dispersal mechanisms that scatter mature grains, making harvest difficult and inefficient. Domesticated varieties developed mutations that retained seeds on the plant until manual harvest, dramatically improving agricultural productivity. Genetic analysis reveals that this critical domestication trait appeared simultaneously in wheat and barley populations across the Fertile Crescent region approximately 10,000 years ago. The synchronous appearance of identical mutations in different locations suggests coordinated selection programs rather than random genetic variation and natural selection. The domestication of multiple crop species occurred within remarkably compressed time periods that indicate systematic selective breeding programs rather than gradual evolutionary processes. Einkorn wheat, emmer wheat, barley, lentils, peas, chickpeas, and flax all transitioned from wild to domesticated forms within approximately 1,000 years in regions spanning from modern Turkey through the Levant to western Iran. The coordinated timing of these domestication events across different plant species and geographical locations suggests knowledge sharing among agricultural communities or implementation of planned breeding programs designed to create complete agricultural systems. The genetic modifications that distinguish domesticated crops from their wild ancestors demonstrate sophisticated understanding of inheritance principles and selective breeding techniques. Domesticated wheat varieties contain chromosomal changes that increase seed size, reduce seed dispersal, and synchronize flowering times. These modifications required multiple generations of careful selection, maintaining specific breeding populations while eliminating undesirable traits. The botanical knowledge necessary for conducting such breeding programs includes understanding of flowering biology, seed development, and inheritance patterns that conventional archaeology doesn't attribute to Neolithic farming communities. The spread of domesticated crop varieties from their origin points in the Near East occurred at rates that exceed gradual diffusion through population migration or casual trade. Domesticated wheat and barley appeared in Greece by approximately 8500 BC, in the Balkans by 80,000 BC, and in Western Europe by 7500 BC. The rapid transmission of agricultural knowledge and seed stocks across these distances required organized distribution networks and systematic teaching programs that transferred not only seeds, but also the complex agricultural techniques necessary for successful cultivation in different environmental conditions. The archaeological pattern matches descriptions in Sumerian texts of organized knowledge transmission following catastrophic disruption. Agricultural development in regions far from the Near Eastern domestication centres displays similar patterns of rapid advancement, suggesting either independent contact with the same knowledge sources or coordinated global programs of agricultural development. Rice domestication in China began approximately 9500 BC, with genetic modifications appearing that parallel those in Near Eastern wheat domestication, including reduced seed dispersal and increased seed size. Maize domestication in Mexico beginning approximately 90,000 BC involved even more dramatic genetic modifications that transformed the small-seeded teosint plant into large-eared corn through breeding programs that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of plant genetics. The agricultural techniques required for successful crop cultivation appeared simultaneously with domesticated plant varieties, indicating that farming knowledge was transmitted as complete systems rather than developing gradually through experimentation. The sites showing earliest evidence of agriculture demonstrate immediate implementation of irrigation systems, soil preparation techniques, crop rotation practices, and storage methods necessary for successful farming. The absence of experimental phases or gradual capability development suggests that agricultural knowledge arrived at these sites in fully developed form, transmitted by populations possessing established farming expertise. Sumerian records describe the Third Age as a period when direct divine presence diminished, and knowledge preservation became the responsibility of human institutional structures. This transition corresponds archaeologically to the emergence of temple complexes and priestly schools dedicated to preserving astronomical, mathematical, and technological knowledge. The Sumerian temple at Eridu, with 17 distinct building levels dating back to approximately 5000 BC, demonstrates institutional continuity in knowledge preservation across multiple generations. The temple complex at Eridu represents the earliest known example of monumental religious architecture in Mesopotamia and demonstrates institutional structures designed specifically for knowledge preservation, rather than purely ceremonial functions. Excavations conducted by Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd between 1946 and 1949 uncovered a sequence of 17 superimposed temple structures spanning over 2,000 years of continuous use from approximately 5500 BC to 3500 BC. Each successive temple was built directly atop its predecessor, following identical architectural plans that preserve specific dimensional relationships and spatial arrangements across the entire sequence. The architectural consistency maintained across 17 building phases at Eridu indicates that temple construction followed standardized plans preserved and transmitted through institutional mechanisms rather than being reinvented by each generation of builders. The temples maintained identical orientations aligned to cardinal directions with precision measured in degrees. The interior chamber arrangements replicated specific proportional relationships that encoded mathematical constants and astronomical cycles. The continuity of these architectural features across multiple reconstructions demonstrates that priestly authorities possessed written or memorized building specifications and possessed the authority to enforce adherence to traditional designs. The underground chambers discovered beneath the Eridu temple complex provide direct evidence of knowledge preservation activities conducted by temple priesthoods. The chambers, carved into bedrock and sealed with fired brick vaulting, contained storage facilities designed to protect materials from environmental damage. Chemical analysis of residues on chamber surfaces reveals that inhabitants treated the walls with preservative compounds, including cedar oil and bitumen that created moisture barriers and prevented biological degradation. The environmental control systems incorporated into these chambers, including ventilation shafts and drainage channels, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of preservation requirements for maintaining documents and artifacts across extended time periods. The astronomical observations conducted from Eridu temples are documented through artifacts and architectural features that demonstrate systematic sky monitoring programs maintained across multiple generations. The temple rooftops contained observation platforms with stone markers positioned to track sunrise and sunset positions throughout the annual cycle. Bronze instruments recovered from temple contexts include sighting devices with graduated scales for measuring stellar positions and angles. Administrative tablets from later periods reference the _19_ as keepers of astronomical records that dated back to the temple's founding, indicating institutional memory of continuous observation programs spanning millennia. The scribal schools associated with temple complexes throughout Mesopotamia emerged during the Third Age as formal institutions for training specialists in reading, writing, mathematics, and specialized knowledge domains. Archaeological evidence from scribal schools at Nippur, Ur, and other major Sumerian cities reveals standardized curricula that transmitted knowledge through systematic instruction rather than informal apprenticeship. Student exercises recovered from these schools demonstrate progressive training programs that began with basic literacy and numeracy before advancing to specialized topics including astronomical calculation, legal formulation, and literary composition. Egyptian traditions preserve parallel accounts of a primordial period called Zep Tepi, the first time, when divine beings established the foundations of pharaonic civilization. The Turin Papyrus, discovered by Bernardino Drovetti in 1822, contains explicit references to rulers who governed Egypt before the first human dynasties, describing reigns lasting thousands of years and introducing specific technologies. These divine monarchs established the astronomical knowledge, architectural principles, and administrative systems that would characterize Egyptian civilization for millennia. The Turin King List, preserved on papyrus currently housed in the Egyptian Museum of Turin, presents a comprehensive chronology that begins with divine rulers and demigods before transitioning to human pharaohs. The papyrus, dating to the reign of Rameses II around 1250 BC, but clearly copying much earlier sources, divides Egyptian history into distinct periods including the reigns of the gods, the reigns of the spirits of the dead, and the reigns of human kings. The document provides specific reign lengths for each ruler, with divine kings credited with governing for periods ranging from several hundred to several thousand years. The divine rulers named in the Turin Papyrus correspond to the major deities of the Egyptian pantheon, with each credited for introducing specific aspects of civilization. Ptah, the first ruler listed, is described as establishing the principles of architecture and craftsmanship that would govern Egyptian construction for millennia. Ra's reign introduced solar calendar systems and astronomical observation programs. Thoth's period established writing, mathematics, and the preservation systems necessary for maintaining knowledge across generations. The systematic association of specific technologies with particular divine rulers suggests that papyrus preserves historical traditions of actual knowledge transmission events, rather than purely mythological constructs. The reign lengths attributed to divine rulers in the Turin Papyrus employ consistent mathematical relationships that indicate astronomical rather than arbitrary chronological frameworks. Ptah's reign of 9,000 years corresponds to specific precessional subcycles, while Re's governance period aligns with calculated solar cycles. The mathematical precision of these chronological assignments suggests that Egyptian chronographers possess sophisticated understanding of astronomical time measurement and encoded actual celestial cycles into their historical frameworks. The correlation between Egyptian divine chronology and Sumerian Seven Ages calculations indicates these civilizations shared common astronomical knowledge systems. Manetho's Egyptiaca, composed around 280 BC while the author served as high priest at Heliopolis, provides additional details about divine and semi-divine rulers that complement the Turin papyrus accounts. Manetho describes gods ruling for 13,900 years, followed by semi-divine intermediaries ruling for 11,000 years before the establishment of human dynasties around 3100 BC. While Manetho's original work survives only through fragments preserved by later historians including Josephus and Eusebius, the consistency of these fragments with the Turin papyrus demonstrates that multiple independent sources preserve traditions of pre-dynastic divine rule. The technologies attributed to divine rulers in Egyptian sources include specific capabilities that appear suddenly in the archaeological record without clear developmental stages. The astronomical knowledge demonstrated in early dynastic monuments indicates access to centuries of observational data and sophisticated mathematical techniques. The architectural precision evident in Old Kingdom construction reveals engineering capabilities that conventional archaeology struggles to explain given the supposed technological limitations of the period. The immediate implementation of complex administrative systems including centralized taxation, labor organization, and agricultural management suggests inheritance of governmental structures rather than gradual institutional development. The zodiac ceiling at the Temple of Hathor in Dendera represents one of the most sophisticated astronomical documents from ancient Egypt, encoding precessional calculations with mathematical precision. Analysis of the zodiac's stellar positions reveals it depicts the sky as it appeared approximately 10,500 BC, corresponding to the Third Age in Sumerian chronology. The astronomical knowledge required to calculate and depict stellar positions from such a remote epoch demonstrates access to observational records spanning thousands of years. The Dendera zodiac, discovered during Napoleon's Egyptian expedition and subsequently removed to the Louvre Museum in 1821, consists of a circular sandstone relief approximately 2.5 meters in diameter, carved into the ceiling of a chapel on the temple's roof. The zodiac depicts 48 constellations arranged in concentric circles surrounding the celestial North Pole, with planetary positions and astronomical symbols indicating specific celestial configurations. The artistic execution demonstrates sophisticated understanding of astronomical relationships and the mathematical techniques necessary for projecting three-dimensional celestial sphere onto two-dimensional circular format. The stellar positions depicted in the Dendera zodiac do not correspond to the sky as it appeared during the Ptolemaic period when the temple was constructed around 50 BC. Analysis conducted by researchers at the Paris Observatory reveals that the constellation positions match the sky as it would have appeared approximately 10,500 BC when corrected for precessional displacement. The spring equinox point shown in the zodiac lies in the constellation Leo rather than Aries or Pisces, where it would have been located during the Ptolemaic period. This displacement indicates that the zodiac depicts astronomical conditions from approximately 12,000 years before its physical carving, suggesting it copied much earlier sources or calculated historical stellar positions using sophisticated astronomical techniques. The mathematical calculations required to project stellar positions backward in time across 12 millennia of precessional change demonstrate astronomical capabilities far exceeding conventional expectations for ancient Egyptian astronomy. The computations must account for the rate of axial precession approximately 1 degree every 72 years, calculate the accumulated displacement across the entire time period, and adjust constellation positions accordingly. These calculations require sophisticated trigonometric techniques and precise knowledge of precessional mechanics that conventional history attributes to Greek astronomers of the Hellenistic period at the earliest. The planetary positions depicted in the Dendera zodiac encode additional astronomical information that provides independent confirmation of the represented epoch. The zodiac shows specific planetary configurations, including conjunctions, and alignments that occurred during the represented historical period. Computer modelling of planetary positions throughout history reveals that the configurations shown in the zodiac match actual planetary alignments that occurred approximately 10,500 BC with precision that eliminates coincidental correspondence. The accuracy of these planetary positions indicates that the zodiac's creators possessed either detailed historical records of ancient astronomical observations or sophisticated computational capabilities for calculating historical planetary positions. The Egyptian astronomical knowledge demonstrated in the Dendera zodiac corresponds closely with Sumerian astronomical texts describing celestial observations maintained from the Third Age. Both civilizations possessed detailed understanding of precessional mechanics, maintained observational records spanning millennia, and developed mathematical techniques for calculating historical and future stellar positions. The correlation between Egyptian and Mesopotamian astronomical capabilities during comparable chronological periods indicates these civilizations participated in shared knowledge systems that transcended geographical and cultural boundaries. The preservation of this astronomical knowledge through institutional structures, including temple priesthoods and scribble schools, demonstrates systematic efforts to maintain sophisticated capabilities across extended historical periods that included catastrophic disruptions and cultural transitions. The Fourth Age in Sumerian chronology corresponds to references in multiple ancient sources describing an advanced maritime civilization that established global trade networks and technological exchange systems. Plato's account of Atlantis, derived from Egyptian priestly sources, describes a civilization that achieved mastery over natural forces and developed technologies enabling worldwide communication and transportation. Archaeological evidence of transoceanic contact during supposedly isolated prehistoric periods supports the historical reality of these global networks. Plato's dialogues Timaeus and Critias, composed around 360 BC, preserve the most detailed ancient account of Atlantean civilization based on information Plato claims was transmitted through his ancestor Solon from Egyptian priests at Sais. The priest described Atlantis as existing 9,000 years before Solon's visit to Egypt around 600 BC, placing the civilization's flourishing period at approximately 9600 BC. This dating corresponds precisely with the Fourth Age chronology in Sumerian tablets, and aligns with the post-Younger Dryas period, when global climate stabilization would have enabled advanced maritime civilizations to develop. The geographical description provided in Plato's account places Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean, describing an island larger than Libya and Asia combined that served as a stepping stone to other lands and a true continent beyond. This description has led researchers to propose various locations for Atlantis, ranging from the mid-Atlantic ridge to the Caribbean basin to Antarctica. However, the account's emphasis on Atlantis as a maritime power controlling extensive trade networks suggests the name may have referred to a civilization rather than a single geographical location, with influence extending across multiple oceanic regions through coordinated naval capabilities. The technological capabilities attributed to Atlantis in Plato's account include advanced metallurgy, with particular emphasis on orichalcum, a metal described as second in value only to gold and possessing unique properties. The Atlanteans supposedly extracted this metal from the earth and used it extensively in construction and ornamentation. While orichalcum's exact composition remains debated, recent analysis of ancient metallurgical slag from Mediterranean sites has identified copper-zinc-gold alloys with unusual properties that may correspond to the described material. The ability to produce such complex alloys requires sophisticated metallurgical knowledge, including precise temperature control and understanding of alloying principles. The architectural achievements described for Atlantis include massive construction projects involving concentric rings of water and land, bridges connecting these rings, and tunnels allowing ship passage between different zones. The scale of these projects, with rings measuring multiple kilometers in diameter and walls covered in precious metals, would have required engineering capabilities, resource mobilization, and construction management comparable to later Roman imperial projects. The hydraulic engineering necessary for maintaining the water channels and controlling water levels demonstrates advanced understanding of fluid dynamics and civil engineering principles. The agricultural systems attributed to Atlantis included irrigation networks that enabled 2 harvests per year and sophisticated crop management that supported large urban populations. The description of abundant natural resources, including diverse animal species, extensive forests, and rich mineral deposits, suggests a civilization that had achieved sustainable resource management across vast territories. The administrative systems necessary for coordinating agricultural production, resource extraction, and trade across such extensive domains would have required sophisticated bureaucratic structures and record-keeping systems comparable to those documented in later Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations. Botanical, genetic, and archaeological evidence demonstrates contact between continents during periods when conventional history maintains they were isolated. Cocaine and tobacco residues found in Egyptian mummies indicate trade with the Americas thousands of years before Columbus. The Fuente Magna bowl discovered in Bolivia contained Sumerian cuneiform script, while the Bat Creek stone from Tennessee displays ancient Hebrew characters. These artifacts suggest extensive maritime networks that connected civilizations across vast oceanic distances. The detection of cocaine and tobacco alkaloids in Egyptian mummies represents one of the most controversial findings in archaeological chemistry. Research conducted by toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova in 1992 identified cocaine, nicotine, and hashish in tissue samples from multiple Egyptian mummies, including the mummy of Henut-Tewi from the 21st dynasty around 1040 BC. These findings were initially dismissed as contamination, but subsequent analysis by independent laboratories confirmed the presence of New World plant alkaloids in mummy tissues. Since coca and tobacco are endemic to the Americas and were not cultivated in Africa or Europe before 1500 AD, according to conventional history, their presence in ancient Egyptian remains indicates transoceanic contact. Additional testing of Egyptian mummies conducted by researchers at the Institute of Anthropology and Human Genetics in Munich confirmed cocaine and nicotine residues in 9 mummies from various dynasties spanning from the 11th dynasty, around 2000 BC to the Ptolemaic period. The distribution of these alkaloids within mummy tissues shows patterns consistent with ingestion during life, rather than external contamination after death. The concentration levels detected exceed those that could result from environmental contamination and match profiles seen in modern forensic cases of drug use. The consistency of these findings across multiple independent studies and different mummy specimens strengthens the case for actual transoceanic trade in plant products. The Fuente Magna bowl, discovered in 1958 near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia by a local farmer, displays inscriptions in 2 distinct writing systems. The exterior surface contains Proto-Sumerian pictographic characters similar to those used in Mesopotamia around 3000 BC, while the interior shows Proto-Canaanite alphabetic characters. Analysis of the inscription by epigraphers, including Clyde Winters and Bernardo Biados Iacovazzo, suggests the text contains Sumerian religious invocations. The ceramic composition and manufacturing techniques used for the bowl match local Andean pottery traditions, indicating it was produced in South America using imported writing systems rather than being a transported Mesopotamian artifact. The linguistic content of the Fuente Magna bowl's Sumerian text includes recognizable words and phrases that correspond to known Sumerian religious terminology. The inscription references Nia, a Sumerian goddess, and employs grammatical structures characteristic of ancient Sumerian. Skeptics have questioned the bowl's authenticity. But petrological analysis of surface weathering and ceramic composition conducted by the Bolivian Archaeological Society confirms the artifact's antiquity and local manufacture. The presence of authentic Sumerian script on a pre-Columbian South American artifact indicates either direct contact between Mesopotamian and Andean civilizations or transmission of Mesopotamian writing systems through intermediary maritime cultures. The Bat Creek Stone, discovered in 1885 during a Smithsonian Institution excavation of a burial mound in Tennessee, contains inscriptions that researcher Cyrus Gordon identified in 1970 as Paleo-Hebrew characters. The inscription reads from right to left following Semitic writing conventions and translates as, quote, 21 or quote 22, the stone was recovered from an undisturbed burial context dated to approximately 200 AD through associated artifacts. The presence of Hebrew script in a Native American burial mound indicates either trans-oceanic contact between Mediterranean and North American populations or the presence of Mediterranean settlers in pre-Columbian America. Additional evidence of transoceanic contact includes genetic markers found in Native American populations that indicate contributions from non-Asian ancestries. DNA analysis has identified genetic sequences in some Native American groups that show closer affinity to European or Middle Eastern populations than to Asian groups, challenging the conventional model of exclusive migration from Asia across the Bering Land Bridge. The distribution of these genetic markers in coastal populations from both Pacific and Atlantic regions suggests multiple waves of maritime contact that introduce genetic diversity through seafaring populations arriving from various origins. Archaeological discoveries of Old World crops in New World context dating to pre-Columbian periods provide additional evidence for transoceanic contact. Bottle gourds, cotton species, and other cultivated plants show genetic characteristics indicating introduction from Africa or Asia, rather than independent New World domestication. The presence of these crops in American archaeological contexts dating to several millennia BC demonstrates that maritime contact enabled biological exchange long before the conventional date of European contact. The distribution patterns of these introduced species along coastal regions suggest arrival through seafaring rather than overland. Migration. The Piri-Reis map, compiled in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri-Reis but clearly based on much older source materials, shows the Antarctic coastline as it appeared before ice coverage. The accuracy of this depiction, confirmed by modern seismic surveys of subglacial topography, indicates that the source maps were created during a period when Antarctica was accessible to ancient navigators. The mathematical precision of the map's projections demonstrates cartographic knowledge that wouldn't officially be developed until centuries later. The Piri-Reis map, discovered in 1929 at the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, depicts portions of the Atlantic Ocean, including the coastlines of Western Europe, northwestern Africa, and eastern South America. Most remarkably, the map shows a southern landmass that corresponds in position and general outline to the Antarctic Peninsula and Queen Maud Land coastline. The map's annotations, written in Turkish, indicate that Piri-Reis compiled it from approximately 20 source maps, including charts dating to the time of Alexander the Great and older Phoenician maps. The Admiral explicitly states that some source materials depicted lands that were no longer visible, suggesting he recognized that his sources represented geographical features from remote historical periods. The Antarctic coastline shown on the Piri-Reis map matches the subglacial topography of the continent, as revealed by seismic surveys conducted during the International Geophysical Year of 1957 and 58. The map depicts mountains, bays, and coastal features that are currently buried beneath ice sheets averaging over 2 kilometers in thickness. Detailed comparison conducted by Charles Hapgood and his students at Keene State College revealed that the map's Antarctic features correspond closely to the actual coastline configuration beneath the ice. The accuracy of this correspondence cannot be explained by coincidence, and indicates that the source maps were created during a period when Antarctica's coastline was ice-free and accessible to cartographers. The dating of when Antarctica's coastline was last ice-free presents challenges that make the peri-race map particularly anomalous. Conventional glaciology maintains that Antarctica has been ice-covered for approximately 34 million years based on analysis of deep ocean sediments and ice core records. However, localized ice-free conditions in coastal regions may have existed during warmer climatic periods. The Ross Sea region shows evidence of ice-free conditions as recently as 6,000 years ago, based on analysis of sediment cores containing diatoms and other organisms requiring open water. The possibility of ice-free coastal conditions during the early Holocene period between 12,000 and 6,000 years ago would align with the time frame when global maritime civilizations could have conducted exploratory voyages and cartographic surveys. The mathematical projections used in the peri-race map demonstrate sophisticated cartographic techniques that wouldn't officially be developed until much later periods. Analysis by the United States Navy Hydrographic Office in 1960 concluded that the map employs a mathematical projection that accurately represents spherical Earth surface on flat medium despite distortions inherent in such transformations. The projection maintains correct longitudinal relationships across vast oceanic distances with accuracy that requires understanding of Earth's spherical geometry and the trigonometric calculations necessary for converting three-dimensional coordinates to two-dimensional representations. The navigational knowledge necessary for creating accurate maps of regions, separated by thousands of kilometers of open ocean, demands sophisticated understanding of celestial navigation, timekeeping, and position determination. Ancient navigators would have needed to measure latitude through stellar observations and calculate longitude through precise timekeeping or astronomical methods. The accuracy of longitudinal measurements in the peri-race map suggests that source map creators possessed chronometric techniques for determining longitude or employed astronomical methods such as lunar distance calculations that required advanced mathematical capabilities and precision instruments. Multiple ancient sources describe the Fourth Age ending through catastrophic events involving massive flooding, volcanic activity, and geological upheaval that destroyed the advanced maritime civilization. Geological evidence from approximately 11,600 years ago shows dramatic sea level rises, volcanic eruptions, and tectonic activity that would have devastated coastal civilizations. The Younger Dryas Holocene transition represents a period of massive environmental change that matches the catastrophic descriptions in ancient texts. The geological transition marking the end of the Younger Dryas cold period approximately 11,600 years ago involved rapid climate warming that triggered massive ice sheet collapses and catastrophic sea level rises. The Laurentide ice sheet covering North America experienced accelerated melting that released enormous quantities of fresh water into the North Atlantic. The rate of sea level rise during this period reached several meters per century in some regions, with total sea level increases of approximately 120 meters occurring over several millennia as continental ice sheets collapsed. These rising seas would have inundated vast areas of previously habitable coastal plains, where maritime civilizations would most likely have established their primary settlements. The flooding of coastal regions during the post-Younger Dryas sea level rise eliminated millions of square kilometers of continental shelf that had been exposed during the glacial period. The Sunda Shelf connecting the islands of Indonesia, Malaysia, and mainland Southeast Asia formed a continuous landmass covering approximately 1.8 million square kilometers that was submerged as seas rose. Similar submergence occurred along the margins of all continents with extensive coastal plains including the Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean basin, and the Atlantic coasts of Europe and North America. Any civilizations that had developed in these now submerged regions would have been destroyed with their archaeological remains lying beneath hundreds of meters of seawater and subsequent marine sediments. The volcanic activity that characterized the Younger Dryas Holocene transition included massive eruptions that would have produced regional catastrophes and contributed to climate instability. The Lecher Sea eruption in modern Germany, dated to approximately 11,000 years ago, produced approximately 20 cubic kilometers of ejecta, creating widespread destruction across Central Europe. Similar large-scale volcanic events occurred at sites throughout the Circum-Pacific Ring of Fire, as changing ice loads and tectonic adjustments triggered increased volcanic activity. The atmospheric effects of these eruptions, including ash clouds that reduce solar radiation and sulfur dioxide emissions that created acid rain, would have devastated agricultural systems and contributed to civilizational collapse. The tectonic instability associated with rapid ice sheet collapse triggered earthquakes and tsunamis that would have devastated coastal populations. The removal of massive ice loads from continental surfaces caused isostatic rebound, the uplift of land surfaces that had been depressed under ice weight. This rebound process generated earthquakes as crustal blocks adjusted to changing stress patterns. Additionally, the rapid loading of ocean basins with massive quantities of meltwater created new stress patterns in oceanic crust that triggered submarine earthquakes and associated tsunamis. Coastal civilizations would have faced repeated catastrophic events as tsunamis generated by distant earthquakes struck without warning. The correlation between geological evidence and ancient textual accounts of the Fourth Age catastrophe extends beyond general descriptions of flooding to include specific detail about the sequence and nature of catastrophic events. Plato's account describes Atlantis being destroyed through earthquakes and floods in a single day and night, matching the timescale of tsunami-generated catastrophes. Egyptian texts preserved in the Edfu Temple describe similar rapid destruction of primordial civilizations through waters that covered the land. The consistency of these descriptions with geological evidence of rapid sea level changes, earthquake activity, and coastal inundations supports interpretations that ancient texts preserve historical memory of actual catastrophic events. The Fifth Age, according to Sumerian chronology, began with the establishment of the first cities in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC, marking a transition from direct divine rule to human governance under divine guidance. The archaeological record reveals the sudden appearance of sophisticated urban centres, complete with advanced irrigation, standardized measurements, and complex administrative systems that emerged without clear developmental stages. This discontinuity suggests the civilization inherited rather than developed its capabilities. The emergence of Sumerian civilization around 3500 BC represents one of archaeology's most significant discontinuities, with fully developed urban centres appearing suddenly in the archaeological record without clear antecedents. The cities of Uruk, Eridu, and Ur displayed sophisticated urban planning from their earliest occupation levels, including specialized craft production areas, monumental architecture, complex irrigation systems, and evidence of centralized administrative control. The absence of gradual development from simpler settlement forms suggests that Sumerian urbanism derived from preserved knowledge systems rather than representing indigenous invention by the local population. The irrigation systems implemented in early Sumerian cities demonstrate engineering sophistication that required advanced understanding of hydrology, surveying, and coordinated labour management. The networks of canals, dikes, and water control structures distributed water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers across vast agricultural areas with precision that maintained optimal water delivery to thousands of fields. The engineering calculations necessary for designing these systems, including determination of canal gradients, flow rates, and distribution patterns, required mathematical knowledge and surveying capabilities that conventional archaeology struggles to explain for populations supposedly emerging from pre-literate village societies. The standardization of weights and measures evident from the earliest Sumerian period indicates centralized authority and systematic planning that proceeded rather than developed gradually alongside urbanization. archaeological discoveries of standardized weight sets, measuring vessels, and counting tokens from early Sumerian contexts demonstrate that mathematical and economic systems were implemented as complete frameworks rather than evolving through trial and error. The base 60 mathematical system used throughout Sumerian civilization appears fully developed in the earliest texts, without evidence of experimental notation systems or competing mathematical frameworks, suggesting inheritance of established mathematical knowledge. The cuneiform writing system appeared in essentially complete form by 3200 BC, with sophisticated capabilities for recording not only economic transactions, but also complex legal concepts, literary works, and technical knowledge. The earliest cuneiform texts demonstrate grammatical complexity and specialized vocabulary, indicating that the writing system had already undergone substantial development before the earlier surviving examples. The rapid expansion of literacy and the immediate application of writing to diverse administrative, legal, and literary purposes suggest that Sumerian scribes inherited writing traditions from earlier sources, rather than inventing the system during the Fifth Age. The astronomical knowledge demonstrated in early Sumerian texts, including precise calendrical systems, eclipse prediction capabilities, and detailed stellar catalogues, indicates access to observational data accumulated over centuries or millennia. The mathematical techniques used for astronomical calculations, including the base 60 system, particularly suited for angular measurements and time divisions, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. The immediate application of this astronomical knowledge to agricultural planning, religious calendars, and administrative scheduling indicates that Sumerian civilization possessed advanced astronomical capabilities from its inception, rather than developing these gradually through observation and calculation. The Sumerian king list, preserved on multiple tablets, including the Well-Blundell prism housed in the Ashmolean Museum, presents chronological puzzles that challenge conventional historical interpretation. The document records rulers before the Great Flood with reigns lasting tens of thousands of years, followed by post-flood kings with more reasonable but still extraordinary lifespans. Rather than dismissing these figures as mythological exaggeration, analysis reveals they represent actual astronomical calculations and timeline markers that encode sophisticated chronological information. The Well-Blundell prism, acquired by the Ashmolean Museum in 1923, represents the most complete version of the Sumerian king list, preserved on a clay prism measuring approximately 20 centimeters in height. The text, written in cuneiform script dating to approximately 2000 BC during the reign of Sin-Magir of Isin, compiles information from much earlier sources to create a comprehensive chronology of Sumerian rulership from mythical origins through contemporary dynasties. The document divides its chronology into distinct periods separated by the Great Flood, with antediluvian rulers credited with reigns of extraordinary duration followed by post-flood kings with progressively shorter but still remarkable lifespans. The antediluvian section of the king list names 8 rulers who governed 5 Sumerian cities before the flood, with their combined reigns totaling 241,200 years. The individual reign lengths display mathematical relationships that suggest astronomical calculations rather than arbitrary mythological numbers. Alulim of Eridu ruled for 28,800 years, exactly 8 Sumerian Sar units of 3,600 years each. Al-Algar's reign of 36,000 years equals 10 Sar units, while Enmeduranki of Sippar ruled for 21,000 years or approximately 6 Sar periods. These consistent mathematical relationships indicate the numbers encode astronomical cycles, rather than representing actual human lifespans. The Ser unit of 3,600 years that appears throughout antediluvian reign calculations corresponds to significant astronomical cycles recognized in Mesopotamian celestial mechanics. The number represents exactly half the precessional passage through one zodiacal house, or 1/7 of the complete precessional cycle. The consistency with which reign lengths employ Serre multiples suggests that the antediluvian chronology encodes information about astronomical ages and cyclical time periods, rather than recording individual human rulers. The mathematical precision of these calculations demonstrates sophisticated understanding of long-period astronomical cycles that required centuries of observational data to detect and quantify. The post-flood section of the King List shows a dramatic shift in chronological scale, with rulers credited with reigns measured in hundreds rather than thousands of years, though still exceeding normal human lifespans by substantial margins. The first post-flood dynasty at Kish includes 23 kings with reigns totaling 24,500 years, while the dynasty of Uruk that includes the legendary Gilgamesh lists 5 kings ruling for approximately 2,500 years combined. These numbers, while more modest than antediluvian figures, still represent extraordinary longevity that conventional historical interpretation dismisses as mythological exaggeration. Mathematical analysis of post-flood reign lengths reveals underlying patterns that suggest the numbers encode actual chronological information through compression algorithms or symbolic notation systems. When reign lengths are interpreted as representing dynasties or cultural periods rather than individual rulers, the chronology aligns remarkably well with archaeological evidence for sequential occupation and political control of Sumerian cities. The progression from longer to shorter reigns throughout the list corresponds to the transition from mythical to historical periods, with later entries matching documented archaeological and textual evidence for actual historical rulers. The chronological framework presented in the Sumerian king list correlates with the 7 ages system documented in other tablets through shared mathematical relationships and temporal divisions. The antediluvian period corresponds to the 1st through 4th ages in the extended chronology, while post-flood dynasties align with 5th and 6th age timelines. The mathematical precision of these correlations demonstrates that Sumerian chronographers possess sophisticated systems for encoding long-period historical and astronomical information in formats that preserved essential data while accommodating the limitations of cuneiform notation and numerical representation. The 6th Age witnessed the flourishing of classical civilizations that codified and systematized knowledge inherited from earlier periods. Greek philosophy, Roman engineering, and Chinese technological achievements all demonstrate sophisticated understanding of principles that conventional history attributes to original discovery, but which show evidence of derivation from much older sources. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in 1901, exemplifies the advanced astronomical computing capabilities that existed during this period but clearly derived from earlier technological traditions. Greek philosophical traditions from the 6th century BC forward demonstrate immediate sophisticated understanding of mathematical, physical, and metaphysical principles that conventional history attributes to original Greek innovation, but which show clear evidence of derivation from earlier sources. Thales of Miletus, traditionally designated as the first Greek philosopher around 600 BC, possessed knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and natural philosophy that required accumulated observational data and mathematical techniques spanning generations. His accurate prediction of a solar eclipse in 585 BC demonstrates access to astronomical calculation methods that required centuries of eclipse observations to develop. The sudden emergence of these capabilities without documented developmental stages suggests transmission of preserved knowledge from earlier civilizations. Pythagorean mathematical and astronomical knowledge incorporated principles that show clear Egyptian and Babylonian influence, but demonstrated understanding exceeding the documented capabilities of these source cultures. The Pythagorean theorem, musical harmony ratios, and astronomical models employed mathematical relationships that appear in earlier Mesopotamian and Egyptian sources, but were developed to unprecedented levels of sophistication by Pythagorean schools. The religious and philosophical framework surrounding Pythagorean mathematical knowledge including concepts of cosmic harmony and numerical mysticism, mirror traditions preserved in Mesopotamian temple schools and Egyptian mystery traditions, suggesting continuous transmission of integrated knowledge systems combining mathematics, astronomy, and spiritual philosophy. Platonic philosophy incorporated astronomical and cosmological knowledge that derived explicitly from Egyptian sources according to Plato's own accounts. The astronomical observations and mathematical calculations described in Timaeus demonstrate sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, including precession, planetary movements, and cosmic cycles. The description of Atlantis derived from Egyptian priestly sources preserved knowledge of antediluvian civilizations that aligns with Sumerian chronological frameworks. The philosophical concepts developed in Platonic works, including the theory of forms and the immortality of the soul, show clear parallels with Egyptian spiritual traditions documented in pyramid texts and coffin texts, demonstrating continuity of metaphysical knowledge across civilizations. Roman engineering achievements, including aqueduct construction, concrete technology, and architectural innovations, demonstrate capabilities that appeared suddenly in the archaeological record without clear developmental stages. The precision of Roman surveying techniques, the sophistication of hydraulic engineering and water distribution systems, and the durability of Roman concrete formulations indicate access to accumulated technical knowledge rather than original invention. The organizational systems necessary for coordinating massive construction projects, including labor management, material procurement, and quality control, mirror administrative structures documented in earlier Mesopotamian and Egyptian sources. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in 1901 among artifacts recovered from a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera, represents perhaps the most compelling physical evidence of advanced technological capabilities during classical antiquity. The device, dating to approximately 100 BC, consists of at least 37 bronze gears arranged in a complex mechanical computer capable of calculating astronomical positions and predicting eclipses decades into the future. X-ray computed tomography and advanced imaging techniques conducted by researchers at Cardiff University revealed gear tooth counts and mechanical relationships that enable precise astronomical calculations, including the Metonic cycle, the Callippic cycle, and the Saros eclipse prediction cycle. The sophistication of the Antikythera mechanism's design exceeds any other known mechanical device until the development of astronomical clocks in 14th century Europe, creating a technological gap of nearly 1500 years. The gear-cutting precision, the use of differential gearing not officially reinvented until the 16th century, and the astronomical accuracy of the device's calculations demonstrate manufacturing and computational capabilities far exceeding conventional expectations for Hellenistic Greece. The device's complexity suggests it represents the culmination of a long technological tradition rather than an isolated invention, indicating that sophisticated astronomical computing devices existed throughout earlier periods but have not survived in the archaeological record. Chinese technological achievements during the Han Dynasty and subsequent periods demonstrate capabilities that appear suddenly without clear developmental stages, suggesting preservation and transmission of earlier knowledge. The seismoscope invented by Zhang Heng in 132 AD employed principles of inertia and pendulum motion to detect earthquakes at distances exceeding hundreds of kilometers. The precision bronze casting required for this device and the sophisticated understanding of physics principles necessary for its design indicate accumulated knowledge rather than sudden innovation. Similarly, Chinese astronomical instruments, including armillary spheres and celestial globes, demonstrated manufacturing precision and astronomical knowledge that required generations of observational programs and technical development. Throughout the Sixth Age, mystery schools and esoteric traditions maintained preservation networks for advanced knowledge that couldn't be transmitted through public channels. The Eleusinian mysteries, operating for nearly 2,000 years, provided initiates with direct experience of concepts that modern physics is only beginning to validate. Hermetic texts attributed to Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus preserve detailed technical knowledge about consciousness, matter manipulation, and cosmic principles that demonstrate continuity with much earlier knowledge systems. The Eleusinian Mysteries, conducted at Eleusis near Athens from approximately 1500 BC until their suppression by Christian authorities in 392 AD, represent one of the longest operating knowledge preservation institutions in recorded history. The initiatory procedures involved 3 progressive stages, including preliminary purification. The Greater Mysteries conducted annually during autumn, and the highest grade called Apopteia, reserved for those who had completed multiple cycles. The secrecy maintained around these initiations was so effective that despite thousands of initiates over nearly 2 millennia, including most major Greek and Roman philosophers and political leaders, no detailed account of the inner teachings has survived in written form. The transformative effects of Eleusinian initiation on participants are documented through numerous historical accounts, describing profound spiritual experiences and permanent changes in consciousness and worldview. Initiates consistently reported direct perception of spiritual realities that eliminated fear of death and provided experiential understanding of cosmic order that transcended intellectual knowledge. The philosopher Cicero, himself an initiate, described the mysteries as providing not only better life, but also better death through direct understanding of existence's continuity beyond physical form. The consistency of these reports across diverse individuals and historical periods suggests the mysteries provided genuine experiential access to altered states of consciousness, rather than merely symbolic religious ceremonies. The Hermetic texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, composed primarily during the 1st through 3rd centuries AD, but claiming much earlier Egyptian origins, preserve technical and philosophical knowledge that demonstrates continuity with ancient wisdom traditions. The Corpus Hermeticum consists of 17 Greek treatises addressing cosmology, theology, spiritual development, and the relationship between consciousness and matter. The texts describe principles of correspondence between macrocosm and microcosm, encapsulated in the phrase, as above so below, that parallel concepts found in earlier Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Vedic traditions. The sophisticated understanding of consciousness, matter, and their interaction, described in Hermetic texts, anticipates concepts from quantum physics, including observer effects and consciousness's role in physical manifestation. The Emerald Tablet, a foundational Hermetic text describing principles of matter transformation and spiritual development, presents concepts that align with both ancient alchemical traditions and modern physics principles. The text description of prima materia, the fundamental substance underlying physical manifestation, parallels quantum field theory's concept of vacuum fluctuations as the source of particle creation. The alchemical processes described for transmuting base metals into gold employ symbolism that simultaneously describes chemical operations and consciousness transformation techniques, demonstrating the integrated knowledge frameworks characteristic of ancient wisdom, traditions that unified material and spiritual understanding. The Kybalion, published in 1908, but claiming to preserve ancient Hermetic teachings, articulates 7 fundamental principles that govern reality, including mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. These principles demonstrate sophisticated understanding of reality's fundamental nature that aligns with discoveries in modern physics, including wave-particle duality, resonance phenomena, and the role of observation in quantum mechanics. The continuity of these concepts across multiple millennia, from ancient Egyptian sources through Hellenistic Hermetic texts to contemporary esoteric traditions, demonstrates successful preservation of advanced knowledge through mystery school networks, Sumerian chronology identifies contemporary human civilization as the Seventh Age, characterized by rapid technological advancement and global integration that parallels achievements described for previous cycles. The exponential growth in computing power, genetic engineering capabilities, and artificial intelligence development mirrors descriptions of technologies that existed in earlier ages before catastrophic resets. The ancient warnings about technological hubris leading to civilizational collapse take on new relevance as modern science approaches capabilities that could fundamentally alter planetary conditions. Contemporary technological development follows exponential growth patterns that create doubling times measured in months or years, rather than decades or centuries characteristic of earlier historical periods. Moore's law, describing the doubling of computer processing power approximately every 2 years, has held relatively constant since 1970, creating computational capabilities that have increased by factors exceeding 1 million over 5 decades. This exponential technological acceleration matches descriptions in ancient texts of final age civilizations that achieve rapid advancement before encountering catastrophic limitations or self-destruction through misapplication of advanced capabilities. Genetic engineering technologies developed since the discovery of DNA structure in 1953 now enable direct manipulation of genetic material with precision approaching single nucleotide resolution. CRISPR gene editing systems developed in 2012 provide capabilities for modifying any organism's genetic code with relative ease and minimal cost. These capabilities parallel ancient descriptions of biological manipulation, including Sumerian accounts of genetic modification that created enhanced human varieties and Egyptian texts describing breeding programs that produce specialized animal forms. The ethical and practical challenges posed by genetic engineering, including potential for creating new diseases, disrupting ecosystems, or fundamentally altering human nature, mirror ancient warnings about biological manipulation's dangers. Artificial intelligence development has progressed from simple pattern recognition systems to sophisticated neural networks capable of learning, reasoning, and creative production at levels approaching or exceeding human capabilities in specific domains. Machine learning algorithms now defeat human champions in complex strategic games, generate realistic images and text, and make autonomous decisions in critical applications including medical diagnosis and financial trading. The potential for artificial general intelligence that matches or exceeds human cognitive abilities across all domains raises existential questions about humanity's future role and the risks of creating superintelligent systems that might pursue goals misaligned with human welfare. Ancient texts warning about creating artificial beings that escape control and threaten their creators take on new significance as artificial intelligence capabilities advance. Climate modification capabilities through both intentional geoengineering and inadvertent greenhouse gas emissions provide humanity with unprecedented ability to alter planetary conditions at global scales. The atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration has increased from approximately 280 parts per million in pre-industrial times to over 420 parts per million currently, driving global temperature increases and climate disruptions that threaten agricultural systems and coastal populations. Proposed geoengineering solutions, including stratospheric aerosol injection and ocean fertilization, would provide direct planetary-scale climate control, but carry risks of unintended consequences that could trigger catastrophic environmental changes. The parallels with ancient accounts of civilizations that disrupted planetary balances through technological interventions suggest contemporary humanity faces similar challenges that destroyed earlier advanced cultures. Multiple ancient chronological systems, including Mayan calendars, Hindu cosmic cycles, and Mesopotamian astronomical calculations, identify the current era as a critical transition period, requiring external guidance to navigate successfully. The mathematical precision of these converging predictions and their correlation with contemporary global crises including climate change, resource depletion, and technological risks, suggest that ancient prophecy systems were based on sophisticated analysis of long-term civilizational development patterns rather than supernatural revelation. The Mayan long count calendar, which completed a major cycle on December 21, 2012, marks time from a creation date corresponding to August 11th, 3114 BC in the proleptic Gregorian calendar. The completion of this 5125-year cycle, consisting of 13 backtoons of 144,000 days each, coincides with multiple other chronological markers in different cultural systems, suggesting coordinated recognition of significant transitional periods. The Mayan calendar's sophisticated integration of multiple concurrent cycles, including the 260-day Tzolk'in, the 365-day Hab, and longer periods tracking Venus and other planetary movements, demonstrates astronomical and mathematical capabilities that required centuries of observations and calculations. Hindu cosmology describes vast time cycles, including the current Kali Yuga, an age of darkness and decline lasting 432,000 years that began in 3102 BC. The Kali Yuga represents the final quarter of a Mahayuga, or Great Age lasting 4,320,000 years, which itself forms 1/71st of a Kalpa, or day of Brahma, lasting 4,320,000,000 years. These enormous timescales demonstrate understanding of geological and cosmic time periods that conventional history doesn't attribute to ancient civilizations. The mathematical precision of these cycles and their subdivision into smaller periods through consistent ratios indicate sophisticated chronological frameworks rather than arbitrary mythological constructs. The convergence of multiple independent chronological systems, identifying the current era as a critical transition period, demonstrates remarkable coordination across cultures, separated by vast distances and time periods. The Mayan calendar completion in 2012, the Kali Yuga's progression toward increasing darkness, the Mesopotamian astronomical cycles approaching completion, and other traditional chronologies all identify the contemporary period as marking significant transitions, requiring fundamental changes in human consciousness and capabilities. The mathematical precision of these converging predictions argues against coincidental timing and suggests derivation from shared knowledge frameworks that understood long-term patterns of civilizational development. Contemporary global crises demonstrate patterns that ancient prophecies associated with age transitions, including environmental degradation, social breakdown, technological disruption, and spiritual disconnection. Climate change driven by fossil fuel combustion threatens agricultural systems and coastal populations through temperature increases, precipitation pattern changes, and sea level rise. Resource depletion, including declining fossil fuel reserves, freshwater scarcity, and soil degradation, challenges civilization's ability to maintain current population levels and consumption patterns. Technological risks, including nuclear weapons proliferation, synthetic biology hazards, and artificial intelligence alignment problems, create existential threats that could eliminate human civilization through accident or misuse. The correlation between ancient prophecies and contemporary conditions suggests that chronological systems preserved in traditional cultures encoded sophisticated understanding of civilizational development patterns, including typical crisis points and their characteristic features. The specificity with which ancient texts describe conditions during age transitions, including environmental catastrophes, social upheaval, and moral decay, matches contemporary observations with precision that exceeds coincidental correspondence. This correlation supports interpretations that ancient chronologies were based on analytical understanding of cyclical patterns rather than supernatural revelation, suggesting that earlier civilizations possessed sophisticated capabilities for modeling long-term social and environmental dynamics. The evidence accumulated across these 25 segments presents a compelling case for reconsidering conventional models of human civilizational development. The mathematical precision of ancient chronologies, the sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in prehistoric monuments, the global distribution of similar construction techniques and symbolic systems, the geological evidence for cyclical catastrophes matching ancient accounts, and the technological anomalies that challenge conventional timelines collectively suggest that human development has followed cyclical rather than linear patterns. The 7 Ages framework preserved in Sumerian records may represent genuine historical tradition, documenting repeated cycles of advancement and catastrophic decline that have characterized human civilization across timescales far exceeding conventional historical chronologies. Understanding these patterns and the knowledge systems that preserved them across catastrophic transitions becomes essential as contemporary civilization confronts challenges that ancient traditions consistently associate with age transitions and potential civilizational collapse. The systematic investigation presented across these multiple domains of evidence reveals patterns that challenge fundamental assumptions about human civilizational development. The mathematical precision of Sumerian chronological systems, the astronomical sophistication encoded in prehistoric megalithic structures, the global distribution of identical construction techniques appearing simultaneously across separated continents, the geological evidence confirming cyclical catastrophes matching ancient textual accounts, the technological anomalies that exceed conventional capabilities by substantial margins, and the cross-cultural consistency of detailed flood narratives collectively demonstrate that conventional linear models of human progress fail to account for substantial bodies of verified archaeological and geological data. The 7 Ages framework preserved in Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets represents far more than mythological speculation. It constitutes a sophisticated chronological system that integrates astronomical cycles, geological catastrophe patterns, and technological development stages into a comprehensive model of cyclical civilizational rise and decline. The correlation between calculated age transitions and documented catastrophic events, including the Younger Dryas impact, the Holocene flooding, and subsequent climate disruptions, demonstrates that these ancient chronologies preserve genuine historical memory encoded in formats designed to survive catastrophic transitions. The mathematical relationships embedded in these chronologies, including precessional calculations, SR cycle divisions, and astronomical constant encodings, reveal computational capabilities and observational programs spanning millennia. The mystery schools, temple priesthoods, and esoteric traditions that maintained knowledge preservation systems across these catastrophic transitions demonstrate sophisticated institutional structures designed specifically to protect essential information through periods of civilizational collapse. The underground archive complexes, the hereditary bloodline preservation programs, the astronomical observation networks, and the symbolic encoding systems all served coordinated functions, ensuring that critical knowledge would survive and remain accessible to subsequent civilizations. The continuity of specific technical knowledge, including astronomical calculations, architectural principles, metallurgical formulas, and mathematical techniques across multiple civilizational cycles, provides direct evidence that these preservation systems function successfully. Contemporary human civilization exhibits characteristics that ancient chronologies consistently associate with final age transitions, including exponential technological acceleration, environmental degradation approaching catastrophic thresholds, social fragmentation, and spiritual disconnection from natural systems. The convergence of multiple independent chronological frameworks identifying the current era as a critical transition period suggests we face challenges similar to those that destroyed previous advanced cultures. However, contemporary civilization possesses advantages unavailable to earlier cycles, including global communication networks, enabling worldwide knowledge sharing, information storage systems that could preserve essential data through catastrophic events, and scientific understanding of the catastrophic mechanisms that destroyed previous civilizations. The choice facing contemporary humanity mirrors the decision points that confronted earlier advanced cultures during their final age transitions. The integration of technological capabilities with wisdom and environmental harmony represents the essential challenge that previous civilizations apparently failed to navigate successfully. Understanding the cyclical patterns documented in ancient chronologies and the knowledge preservation systems that maintained continuity across catastrophic transitions provides crucial guidance for potentially transcending the destructive cycles that have characterized human civilizational development. The evidence suggests that we stand at a threshold where conscious recognition of these patterns and deliberate application of preserved wisdom could enable humanity to break the cycle of advancement and catastrophic collapse, potentially achieving the stable advanced civilization that the Seven Ages framework suggests represents the ultimate goal of this extended evolutionary process spanning hundreds of thousands of years across multiple civilizational iterations.